how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed.
Welcome, friends and family, for joining us on this special day and space reserved especially for us, remembering your Ed Kosik. Thank you to the Bear Creek Funeral Home and Sanctuary for sharing this venue, and the powers that be for taming our unpredictable weather for us to gather together safely today. I'm Reverend Holly Galbraith, and I'm honored to be here as your life cycle celebrant for today's celebration of life. And as the breeze blows today, we feel Ed's presence, and a single candle will flicker throughout this service today. It will remain burning at this time as a symbol of Ed's light and spirit as we honor and later release him. When I meet with those close to the one honored, I ask initially for words that come to mind about the person that we'll be remembering. Over and over again, the description of hard worker was shared. As a farmer, consultant, and neighbor in this community, it is often expected, but not necessarily a given. The word generous was also added, and even more important. Edward Stanley Kosik, better known as Ed, carried more than a few names too. He was also called son, brother, brother-in-law, uncle to many, friend, stepdad, and husband. Today we welcome all of you and ask you to stay, to recognize, to remember, to reminisce, to reflect, and to release him. And we'll accept Ed as he was and how he will remain within each of your hearts and memories shared here today. So for some of you, this may be your first celebration of life, and for others more. And there's always one thing needed, and that's love and support. This family and their friends, considered to be like family, appreciate you spending time here for Ed. And at the end of our time here together, hopefully you will feel the celebration of Ed's life and what he meant to you and others. So Ed was born in Grand Prairie, Alberta on June 6, 1945, to Stanley and Frances Kosik, and he was welcomed to their busy Kleskin farm north of Highway 43 on Range Road 45, and settled into his large family. And eventually that farm became his residence as an adult. When the topic of school came up, Ed's brother Ken explained that back when they chose to walk the 1.5 miles to catch the bus to Sexsmith, rather than the 3-mile walk to the Grand Prairie school bus. However, Sexsmith only went up to grade 11, so the transition to St. Joe's to graduate was made for grade 12. And upon graduation from school, he was employed by the Bank of Nova Scotia, first in Grand Prairie and then transferred to Yellowknife. And he spent some time there before he returned to Grand Prairie. Oil and gas could provide more than an average $320 a month, described as a sandwich fee. He took up growing grain and raising cattle on the family farm and found himself on rigs with companies such as Anderson Exploration, Devon, Paramount, and Progress Energy. Grand Prairie was where he met his loving wife, Lena, and her young sons, Will and Rick. She embraced farm life and took on the hard work that comes with that. Keeping the home fires burning while Ed was often away working was what you may remember of his lovely Lena. Besides the farm chores and the upkeep of their beautiful yard, she was always baking, creating a blanket or quilt or some other craft. And as was previously mentioned, Ed was a hard worker and often away. He consulted on drilling rigs for 20 years until his semi-retirement, and their yard, massive garden, and tending to their animals kept them very busy. Lena's flowers were extraordinary, especially her lilies and roses. Sadly, his Lena succumbed to a stroke on November 24th, 2012, and for the past 12 years, Ed tried to continue life at the farm without her. But it was evident to those closest to him that it was a lonelier life. He made more shopping trips to town and planted so much more than one person could consume at a harvest time. And although he may have been described as a reserved man at times, he was also friendly and loved to laugh and play cards, and enjoyed when neighbors and visitors dropped by the farm. Ed welcomed them with a smile and encouraged them to take as many eggs and extra produce as they could carry. Generous indeed. It's a rare thing that not many of us can imagine, spending our entire life as a longtime resident in our childhood home until their very last day. And Ed was that person. At the age of 79, on the evening of October 12th, 2024, he passed away in his home and will now be laid to rest with Lena after this service in the Grand Prairie Cemetery today. And for those of you who had an opportunity to say your farewells to Ed and Lena earlier this morning at the viewing, you'll have noted that she was in a lovely enamel-locked box that has been placed with him and his heart. And this year would have been their 50th wedding anniversary. This is simply a soul sketch of the man Ed Kosik that you have known. So I'm going to ask Ed's nephew, Jason Kosik, to share a eulogy on behalf of their family at this time.
Good morning. My name is Jason Kosik, and I'm honored to speak to you today to pay tribute to and to celebrate the life of my uncle, Ed Kosik. The story of Edward Stanley Kosik begins in the Grand Prairie Municipal Hospital on June 6, 1945, where he was born to Stanley and Frances. Ed would be their sixth child, who they soon took home to the family farm just outside of the city to meet his siblings, Johnny, Anne, Walter, Vicky, and Albert. Life on the farm in these early days was busy. My grandparents had only just purchased and moved to the farm 3 years prior, and everyone lived and worked out of the 2-bedroom house, complete with all the modern amenities, like a wood stove and a dirt cellar. Notice how I did not mention running water or a bathroom. Those were found outside. I can only imagine how chaotic life was with 6 kids, ages 13 and under, where everything, including warming water to do dishes, required manual labor. So, it's no surprise that for Ed, growing up on the farm, more often than not, involved helping out and working to complete his daily chores. Aside from the work involved in planting and harvesting crops, the family typically kept around 120 cattle, 300 chickens, pigs, and horses that all needed constantly to be attended to. Ed, like his other siblings, had to learn the skills required to do all of this, skills that he would later use to run his own farm. Now, you would think that coming from a large family would mean that there were a lot of hands to do the work, but by the time Ed was of an age where he could really be of help, most of his older siblings had moved from the family farm to begin lives of their own. In fact, Ed was more like a middle child, growing up with Albert, his older brother of 4.5 years, and his younger brother Ken, my dad, who was 4 years younger than him. Then, at the age of 16, Albert began to work on the rigs, leaving 12-year-old Ed and 8-year-old Ken at home helping their parents run the family farm as they grew up throughout their formative years. After grade 12, Ed followed his older sister Vicky's footsteps and started working for the Bank of Nova Scotia in Grand Prairie. Within about 6 months of starting, the bank transferred him to a branch in Yellowknife. Ed stuck this out for about 1.5 years up north until he realized that for all of his hard work, he had little to show for it. So he made the decision to move back to the family farm and return to a life of crops and cows. It didn't take long, however, for Ed to follow another sibling's footsteps, this time Albert, and begin working on the rigs, a job that he kept for the next 20 years until he switched to consulting. Between working on the rigs and returning home to help with the farm, Ed quickly established a career that he would maintain for the majority of his life. Soon after he first began working on the rigs, he had made his first big purchase. It was a Robin Egg Blue 1964 Galaxy 500 convertible. It was his pride and joy. As often as he could, Ed would cruise the streets of Grand Prairie with the top down, letting his hair blow in the wind. Although that part about the hair I'm probably just imagining. Then, about a year after returning home, my grandparents retired from farming and permanently moved into the town, leaving the family farm, which Ed eventually took over, and to continue to do what he always knew how to do. Throughout his 20s, Ed continued to work the rigs in the winter, tend to the farm in the summer, and spend time with friends sharing stories and laughter. Then, one fateful day, while having something to eat at the Golden Star, he spotted one of the employees, a girl named Lena Kaminsky. Something must have impressed Ed about that first encounter, because soon his bachelor life was over, and he and Lena were married, with a new wife and her 2 sons, Will and Rick. That small 2-bedroom house with no running water was now a home. Some of my earliest memories involve spending time with Ed and Lena in that house, sitting with Lena in the kitchen, visiting with company, or with Ed in the small living room watching a very small black and white TV. I always felt welcome and happy while I was there. The only time I did miss my actual home in the city was when I would have to climb out of the bunk bed in that small bedroom, get dressed, and go out into the cold to use the outhouse. However, Ed's endless supply of candy and chocolate made these small inconveniences worthwhile. Life changed again for Ed some 5 years later when he and Lena began construction on the new house at the top of the hill on the property. As soon as construction was complete, they were moved in, and it took no time at all for the pair to host company and have a party. I remember first seeing that finished product and being fascinated by his sunk-in living room and intercom system that could be used to talk with people in other rooms of the house. For me, that house was the heart of the farm. I spent many summers there doing whatever job Ed would find for me during the day. Then, in the evening, watching late-night TV from his insanely large satellite dish while snacking on candy from Ed's stash. On other nights, company would come over for a visit and a game of cards. These were always loud nights filled with laughter that was punctuated by Ed's distinctive inhale of a laugh. Later, as he began farming less and less, Ed's need to grow something remained, and his garden grew more and more. Back then, I thought it was Lena that wanted the big gardens, but I realize now it was Ed all along. Every summer, the garden seemed to grow just a bit more until soon enough, it would produce enough potatoes to feed half of Grand Prairie. Some years he had 2 gardens, others he had 3, but never just one. Where one apple tree was found one year, 3 more would join the next, until a small orchard could be found hosting every variety of apple possible that the climate could bear. Another staple of the farm that Ed always maintained is that there had to be 2 dogs. Mind you, there was always times when one would pass and a solo dog would have to wander the farm, but this was always short-lived, before a new 4-legged friend would join the property. When I think of you, Ed, I think of games of crib, stories and laughter, and a truck full of eggs, potatoes, and apples that you're more than happy to give away. You leave behind many friends that were fortunate to share this with you, and we say goodbye with heavy hearts. If you are with Lena, your mom and dad, Walter, Vicky, and Paul now, save a place at the table for us. We would love to play another game of cards with you again someday. Rest easy. You'll be with us forever. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Everyone helps to give a broader perspective of who a person truly is, and Ed's longtime neighbor and friend, Cody Wilson, certainly contributes to that as well. So at this time, I'm going to ask Cody to come and share a few words.
Eduardo, my buddy, Uncle Ed, Turkey Toes Kosik, Good Guy Ed, his favorite, and when I worked the rigs, they used to call him my dad. The relationship started around 1990. Ed would be snowplowing driveways in the neighborhood, and I used to crawl up into the tractor, and then I'd plow the rest of the neighbors' driveways. Short time later, I had Ed trained to come to Mom and Dad's first so that I could spend the day to ride around with him in the tractor. A few years later, Dad purchased a new lawn tractor, and from there on in, I was Ed and Lena's mower guy. Fast forward a few years later, and Ed gave me a quad, and I soon became a fixture at the Kosik farm for most of the summer. I can still remember the time moving bales in his old white tractor, sitting on the armrest, and he looked down and said, "Do you want to spend the night?" This was the very first of many. Oh man, Lena could cook too. Over the years following, I spent countless days together on the farm. I'd go to BJ's with Ed to play pool. He would take me to movies. Ed would haul my 4-H calves around, and it always included the Grand Prairie burger from Major's in the Prairie Haven Motel. Ed would always equip me with all kinds of rig graft, and every year would buy me the latest NFR Heston belt buckle. Come 1996, Ed was quick to help me find a truck to drive, and when we found one at Wapiti Auto Sales, we went right down there, and Ed stroked a check for it without even batting an eye. Over the next several months, I paid Ed back. Both Ed and Lena helped me learn to drive, and Lena took me for my driver's test in her Eddie Bauer pickup truck. Come 1999, Ed was quick to get me a job on his rig, Precision 606, and I got to work the rig with Ed for a year or so. I got one good rig story to tell. On a rig, they drill with fluid, and every once in a while you have to perform a BOP test. in case you get a real gas kick down the road. This is where a balloon goes around the pipe and it diverts the fluid and below the balloon into the flare stack, and then it gets burned off. It was about 2 a.m. We pulled the pipe, we actuated the BOP for a test, and after the test we tried to drill again and we were planted. After a short while of trying to get it out, my driller Murray yelled at me, "Go get your dad." I run over to Ed's shack and woke Ed up, and we went up to the rig floor. About an hour of using max weight, max pressure from the pumps, we were just making like inches of leadway. All of a sudden, the driller strapped down the brake handle, yelled a few colorful words, and then went to the doghouse and released the BOP, which he forgot in the first place. Whoosh! Up come drilling fluid, invert cuttings, and it went absolutely everywhere. Ed was standing there completely covered from head to toe. He just kind of smiled, yelled the F word, and walked back to the shack for the night. Over the next several years, Ed would sell me farmland and help me with both my farm dreams and young family lifestyle. In 2005, Ed come with Dad, Jory, Uncle Kirk, Mitch, and me to Toronto for a couple playoff baseball games for the Blue Jays. When we arrived to the airport to go, Ed did not realize that baggage rules have changed since 9/11, and he was quick to be given shit for his half a dozen bottles of hotel shampoos and conditioners, cologne, mouthwash. Ed put up a good argument, but had to eventually dispose of it all. Good or bad, I was always Ed's first call. First call when he drove the tractor into the dugout. First call when he hit a moose down the Bald Mountain Tower Road. First call when he got sideswiped on the overpass. First call before 911 when Lena had her stroke. First call when he needed a ride to Edmonton and someone to spend a week for Lena's final days. First call when we had to plan the funeral. First call when we met at Oliver's the next day to cremate Lena. I remember standing shoulder to shoulder with Ed, wondering what's next. A&W, I guess it was. And then back to the farm to try to rebuild the life without Lena. I spent countless hours and days at the farm with Ed, working on equipment, helping with yard chores, playing crib, Yahtzee, and just plain visiting. One thing about Ed, he loved children, teaching them about the garden, farm life, filling them up with his favorite stash of ice cream treats. Yesterday just plain sucked, as Ed was famous in the neighborhood for his huge bags of chips, normal-sized packs of licorice, full packs of chocolate bars, full packs of Oreo cookies, and a full liter of pop, just what every kid needs. Don't worry, Ed was quick to give me shit like the rest of this world, but he was always quick to forgive, and there was always a lesson to be learned. Ed, please say hi to Lena for me up there, and challenge Uncle Murray, and Uncle Sam to a game of crib. Ed, you'll be dearly missed by my family, all the neighbors of the Kluskin area, all of our friends, and most of all, me, Kinley, and Max.
Thank you, Cody. Those words are most certainly a tribute to the legacy left by Ed in this world, hardworking and generous. Thank you to those who shared aloud your special memories thus far, and please continue to share your memories with the family later today at the luncheon. Ed is physically no longer with us, but his spirit lives on in each person that he talked with, cheered with, worked with, sat around a campfire with, drank with, laughed with, and welcomed into his life. So at this time, I'm going to ask you to listen to a chosen song, Hallelujah, while you reflect on what's already been shared and may add to the memories that you have later.
Heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. You don't really care for music, do ya? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Well, your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on her beauty and the moonlight overthrew ya. Well, she tied you to her kitchen chair. She broke your throne and cut your hair, and from your lips she drew hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Baby, I've been here before. I've seen this room and I've walked the floor. Used to live alone before I knew ya. But I've seen your flag on the marble arch. Our love is not a victory march. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. There's a God above, but all I've ever learned from love was how to shoot somebody who outdrew ya. It's not a cry that you hear at night. It's not someone who's seen the light. It's a cold and broken hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
We have shared so much today, and Ed would be overwhelmed with how you've all come together to celebrate his life as a longtime Kleskin community resident. I have compiled some key elements of our northern Alberta, which are a testament to Ed's long life on his land throughout his 79 years here. So I ask that as I share each one, please respond with the words, "We remember you." In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we say, "We remember you." In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we say, "We remember you." In the opening of the buds and in the warmth of summer, we say, "We remember you." In the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, we say, "We remember you." So long as we live, you too shall live, for you are now a part of us as we all remember you. We remember you. Ed was family, a friend, a colleague, and a husband, and his legacy of hard work, friendship, and generosity is here today amongst all of you. And currently we're in the Peace Hall, and the luncheon provided today will be across the way in the Prairie Hall. Those who are able will join the family and myself for Ed and Lena's interment at the Grand Prairie Cemetery now. They ask you to stay for lunch and to share further stories, and Ed may agree where the best things happen: food, drink, and fellowship. More chairs and tables will be added to this hall before the family gets back. We've reminisced and we've shared our loss of Ed Kosik. We extinguish your candle, and later we'll raise our glasses. Your physical absence in our life is replaced by your essence for each of us and in the legacy of hard work and generosity that you shared. Today, this light will be exchanged for the sun above, and later, the stars in our night sky. And I leave you with a short excerpt from a poem famously known as the Farmer's Creed, published in the Canadian Cooperative, although initially credited to an Illinois farmer, Frank Mann, in 1915. I believe a man's greatest possession is his dignity, and that no calling bestows this more abundantly than farming. I believe hard work and honest sweat are the building blocks of a person's character. I believe that farming, despite its hardships and disappointments, is the most honest and honorable way a man can spend his days on this earth. We acknowledge the power in this act of remembrance and honor you, Ed, whom we have lost by sharing your light in our stories and joys. Thank you, Ed. Thinking of you in this matter, let us all go in quietness of spirit and live in charity with one another. Your presence will be missed, and I hope that I have helped your friends and family say goodbye.
Through the back window of our 59 wagon, I watched my best friend Jamie slipping further away. I kept on waving till I couldn't see her, and through my tears I asked again why we couldn't stay. Mama whispered softly, time will ease your pain. Life's about changing, nothing ever stays the same. And she said, how can I help you to say goodbye? It's okay to hurt, and it's okay to cry. Come to say goodbye. I sit on our bed, he packed his suitcase. I held a picture of our wedding day. His hands were trembling, we both were crying. He kissed me gently and then he quickly walked away. I called up Mom, she said time will ease your pain. Life's about changing, nothing ever stays the same. And she said, how can I help you say goodbye? It's okay to hurt and it's okay to cry. Come let me hold you and I will try. How can I help you to say goodbye? Sitting with Mama, alone in her bedroom. She opened her eyes and then squeezed my hand. She said, I have to go now, my time here is over. And with her final words, she tried to help me understand. Mama whispered softly, time will ease your pain. Life's about change,